All right, y'all. How you feeling this afternoon? Doing all right? I'm Christian from the New Orleans Jazz Museum. I just wanted to welcome y'all. We're very honored to be hosting a production from the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts, NOCCA, the NOCCA Foundation. And I just wanted to remind y'all that this is what we try to do all throughout the week, right? Have live local music. This time we're honored to have the youth come and play for us. And I'm gonna have the people who kind of oversee them and manage them come on up, Dominic Minix and Alan Hayden, y'all. They're gonna talk to you a little more about the program.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. We're so excited to be with you, and this partnership that we have with the NOCCA Foundation and the Jazz Museum is very special. This year, NOCCA is celebrating its 50th anniversary. The first class to graduate was in 1975. So some of the students that you'll be hearing from are part of the class of 2025, and they're a part of history here with you today. We also want to send very warm wishes and thank you to our fiscal sponsor, the Maione Prima Foundation. They are here supporting us and allowing us to be able to share our talents with the community. And so I'm going to pass it over to a fellow NOCCA alum like myself who works with the jazz students. And we'll put our hands together to meet the musicians. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm very proud, a little too proud, to announce these guys. Let's have Akil Haroon on the saxophone first. Akil assisted on being announced last, and so you know I had to do it first. Come on, make him feel some love. Akil Haroon, come on. Excellent Nigel Valle on the guitar. Yes. Come on, Nigel. Come on, show him some love, give him some house. Big up, big up. Yes. Okay, Chris Palmer on the keys. Yes, Chris Palmer. Yes, yes. We got Jaron Jesse on the drums. Yes, yes. Keep it going, keep it going. So last night we just had a big performance, all the jazz kids, and they sounded so good. And Rehan, what's Rehan's last name again? Ruiz, Rehan Ruiz. I'm sorry, I can't remember everything. Rehan Ruiz. The drummers are legends. We have Kamara Dupree playing bass with us. He's another NOCCA alum. Come on out, Kamara, make some noise. That's everybody? Of course, I can't forget. Last but certainly not least, make some noise for Jonathan Burge on the sax, please. Yes, yes, keep it going. Where'd he go? There he is. All right, enjoy NOCCA Level 4. I will, myself. I'm certainly gonna enjoy these guys. All right.
Hello there. What a wonderful afternoon. Let's keep those round of applauses going for our NOCCA Jazz Level 4 students. They are actually going to reset, so thank you so much for joining us as the opening act for this afternoon. So while they get their instruments together, please bear with us as our crew is going to reset the stage. And while that happens, I'm just going to speak a little bit and help you all flow through the afternoon. Hopefully you all have received some beverages. There's wine outside in the front. There's also water. And as I mentioned, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of NOCCA. The NOCCA Foundation is having our annual Art and Soul Gala. So if you are a supporter of arts education and free tuition arts education, it is such a wonderful institution where some alum like John Baptiste, Trombone Shorty, the Marcellus family, and other greats in New Orleans, then please support the arts. The NOCCA Foundation's Art and Soul Gala will be on Saturday, May 17th. There's also QR codes if you want to purchase a ticket. And if you are not from New Orleans and you are visiting with us and you want to support the NOCCA Foundation, there's a way to do that as well. And as we mentioned, the opening act for today's show was brought to you by the NOCCA students, the jazz department. But this afternoon, we have a continuous live recording of the Lagniappe Session. It's a radio show that will be curated by a NOCCA alum, Adonis Rose, Grammy-Award-winning and artistic director of the New Orleans Jazz Orchestra, and currently the executive director of the NOCCA Foundation. He is the first alum in history to serve in this position. So that's very exciting. Yes, please put your hands together. That's amazing, right? He will be interviewing one of the greats, a part of the NOCCA jazz education, Michael Polero, who has done 35 years of service, and you'll hear from both of them this afternoon with the Lagniappe Sessions. So thank you so much. Bear with us and continue to enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you for being here. As Alan mentioned, my name is Adonis Rose, and I am a jazz musician and the executive director of the NOCCA Foundation. So I've been having a radio show, an NPR radio show that's been happening for about 3.5 years, and it's called the Lagniappe Sessions. So on this show, we bring in advocates of the music and arts education to come and sit down and talk about their story and how they support artists in the New Orleans community. So today, we actually have one of my favorite people in the world. I've been knowing this man since I was about 15 or 16 years old. When I was at NOCCA, doing what the kids just finished doing, I've been knowing Mike that long, but he also gave me the opportunity to play in some of his bands and on his gigs when I was young and I was sad and I could hardly play anything. But Mike has been around teaching young musicians and professional musicians how to do a variety of things, to be songwriters, arrangers. We actually just worked on a project together with the great Phil Emanuel. We're going to talk about that today. But Mike Polero has done a lot. I'm not going to tell you too much about what he's done. I'm going to let him talk about himself, which he's not that good at. He don't talk about himself that often. He's a very humble guy. He's a very humble guy, but we'll see what we can pull out of him. Let's hear it from Mike Polero.
Thank you.
So, Mike, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about where you're from. You're not originally from New Orleans, right?
No, I grew up outside of Albany, New York,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to the Berklee College of Music, and that was my connection to New Orleans. I met David Torkanowski and Steve Mazikowski, and some people remember Emily Remler,
Yeah.
guitarist, great guitarist. So basically, David was kind of, my best friend, and he kind of dabbled around going to New York after school and didn't quite feel ready for it. And David said, hey, come down here, a lot of gigs. And it was quite a culture shock.
Sure. Did you and David go to Berklee together?
Yeah, that's where I met David.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
not going to ask you what year. I went to Berklee too.
No, I don't mind. It's
What
we
years?
started in 74.
74?
That's 51.
Yeah, I was born in 75, so I'm not trying to make you.
And I have actually been teaching 35 years, so that's where she got that, because I did start at Loyola. But I've been
Gotcha,
at
yeah.
NOCCA for 23 years.
Yeah.
Your uncle, Chris Everett, and I started 23 years ago.
Gotcha. I thought she was just throwing a number out
I
there.
had to think about it. Yeah, there's a 35 in there.
So, who introduced you to playing music, and was piano your first instrument?
Actually started on clarinet, which is an instrument I don't really enjoy.
Uh-uh.
I mean, if somebody plays it, great, like Gregory Agid or Eddie Daniels, one of those guys. But once I got the piano, I didn't really want to deal with woodwinds.
It's not a very masculine instrument either. I mean, guys on a clarinet in a marching band, it's like playing the flute.
But the funny thing is, my mother made me do it till I was a senior because she said I needed the credit. So because I never practice, they would put me on lower clarinets. I went to the alto clarinet, the bass clarinet. You ever seen a contra alto?
Yeah.
It's like
I
sits
love
on
the
the
bass
ground.
clarinet, though, yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Okay,
But yeah, once I started playing, and my mother was a church organist
gotcha.
and had a very nice voice too. And she wanted my sister and I to play music. My sister stayed with classical. And I don't think my mother intended or knew the jazz world, but they were supportive,
Sure. So,
They got it.
did you audition for Berklee playing the clarinet?
No,
Okay.
no.
So it was piano, and did you
Yeah.
go for jazz studies, or did you go for
I
music
actually went for
education?
composition.
Composition?
Yeah. So at one point they made you learn trombone or trumpet.
Yeah.
Everybody be laughing in the doorway trying to play a trumpet or something. But
Yeah. And at that time, did they only have the 150 Mass Ave building? Did you stay in the dorms at that building at
Yeah.
the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
but still, for its day,
Yeah.
they had just they just built their first recording studio,
Sure.
and now it's just like.
Oh, it's crazy. They've taken over
it's
Boston.
mega. I mean, they buy buildings like it was nothing.
Yeah. Anybody from Boston in here? All right. Awesome. Yeah. Well, we're familiar with Boston. So you went to Berklee. You graduated from school. You moved to New Orleans. Are there any musicians in particular that you started to work with on the music scene at that time?
Well, David Torkanowski was working at a club called the La Strada. It was on the corner of St. Louis and Bourbon. And Ernie Ellie, who you know, brilliant drummer. And he worked under the name Fat Daddy and his All Stars.
Oh, I like that. All right.
And he had George French on bass. And he had Wendell Brunius on trumpet, and David was on keys. And sometimes I would, get the sub for him. So yeah, we were doing what people call traditional jazz. We don't say Dixieland anymore.
That's right.
And back in those days, you really had to be a genius to have a career. Once the Marcelluses made it, and they were younger than me, so we used to play at a place called Tyler's Beer Gardens. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
So when they were like 16, 17, I was like 21, which is a lot of years.
Yeah.
When someone's in high school. And but you didn't get that kind of career unless you were really good enough to play with Miles Davis, like Tony Williams, one of your heroes.
Sure.
So we were just, professional musicians trying to do it. And, back in those days, if you played the Saints or, one of those tunes, you expected the piano player to sound like Wynton Kelly or Oscar Peterson, when someone like Ellis Marsalis did it. But nowadays, we have what we call the trad Nazis.
Right.
And they're like, if you play one thing that wasn't on an old record, they want to have a citizen's arrest.
Yeah, jazz police, traditional jazz police.
And the irony is most of them are from Europe.
Right.
Which is a little bit crazy.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we were playing gigs and, making a living. and occasionally getting to play the kind of music we really wanted to play. Snug Harbor was just starting to be a club, so that's a lot of years ago.
Yeah. And you taught at Loyola for a long time. How long after moving to town did you start teaching? Was Loyola your first teaching gig, or did you do something before that?
Well, I didn't really do much teaching in the late 70s or 80s. So then I went to New York twice because my wife wanted to go. I said, I already did New York. She says, well, I'm going. And she's the kind of woman you'd follow anywhere. So I went back to New York. But anyway, we came back in 1990. And John Mahoney, who was the jazz chair there, gave me I had like 4 or 5 students. It started out very modestly. But 2 of them really made it big. Brian Blade, I think you know the drummer, Brian Blade. I mean, I walked into NOCCA one day and there was Jazz Times magazine and it said, Brian Blade, a 25-year retrospective on his recording career. I was like, God, it's Brian Blade.
At least it wasn't 35 at the time.
Yeah, right. And John Cowart, who was a great pianist, and they formed a band called The Fellowship. And so I was kind of, I always liked how things work with theory and stuff, but I was kind of winging it, There was a lot of, I don't know, whereas now you got your little routine, you get the new kid, and you kind of throw it at him. So, and Matt Lemler was one of the students. So they were pretty advanced students, and you couldn't really bluff them.
Sure.
But,
And you guys had a great program over there. I remember going and working and doing things over the summer, and then even outside of the school, I remember playing at the Polo Lounge. With you. How long did you play at the Polo Lounge at the Windsor Court?
It was like 16 years.
Yeah, 16 years.
Made me a homeowner.
Right.
Because you don't get a loan unless you have a real gig.
That was a good gig. That was a pretty good gig.
Oh,
the bar is cool.
Yeah.
The drinks were cool. I was only drinking orange juice at the time.
Right.
But
but while we're on the subject of Loyola, I'd like to let everybody know that's where I did first meet you when we had a summer program, and you were still at NOCCA. So that's when I was really becoming aware of NOCCA. I mean, I don't think my first stay here in the 70s, I might have heard of it. And I know your uncle, Chris Severin, went there, and we're close to the same age. But that's when I started to become aware of NOCCA, and Clyde Kerr, who was a brilliant trumpet player, did a great job with the program. Sometimes he would send piano students my way. But you showed up with Dwight Fitch, who's a great piano player.
That's right.
Still lives here. And I taught his daughter, Sam Fitch.
Oh, yeah, she's playing her. She's good, too.
Yeah. And then you had Jason Stewart.
Yeah.
And they had this little trio, and I was like, wow, we're never going to see a trio come down the pike like this again. And that wasn't even including the quartet member, Nick Payton.
Right, that's right.
And I didn't know you said Nick Payton was already traveling on weekends and doing gigs, right?
He was traveling in high school.
Yeah, so that was really the first time I became aware of, or was thinking about NOCCA and the kind of people that they were, putting out into the world. And I remember thinking, when Chris Severin and I started, a lot of people don't know you started in 2002. You did the first year.
That's right. That's right.
And you continued on a little bit after that. But they were looking for a new jazz chair, which eventually became Alvin Baptiste, legendary. In fact, I remember you one day, you came out, you were hanging in one of the classes, and you go, wow, Mr. Baptiste. I mean, like he was a little kid. I mean, it was like, that's the kind of impact he had on people.
No, he was definitely a master. But I remember when we came into NOCCA, during that transition period when Clyde was leaving out and then we came in, those were really good times. The original NOCCA campus was on Perrier Street, uptown New Orleans, which was the campus that I went to. But in 1999, 2000, a new campus came up, which is on Charter Street now, which is not far from here. Have you guys ever been to NOCCA, to the campus? Most of you guys from out of town? All right, where you guys from? Mexico. All right, Mexico. Philly. All right,
Oh my God, we got an
Australia.
international crowd.
Fort Lauderdale, okay. San Diego. Anybody from St. Bernard Parish? All right. All right, well, it's good to have you guys here. Thank you for joining us at the Jazz Museum. We know people come from all over the world, but the new NOCCA campus is amazing. I mean, the facility is far beyond what we had when I attended school there. And then when Mike and I went in to relieve Mr. Clyde Kerr, who was my instructor, I stayed for a few years, but Mike stayed, and now it's been what,
23 years, yeah.
23 years
Yeah, 23
that he's been teaching the students at NOCCA. Let's give it up to him.
Hair used to be jet black.
Well, I used to have hair, so.
And I was talking about my first students at Loyola. So my first two students, piano students at NOCCA, were John Baptiste
Oh, yeah.
and a gentleman named Sullivan Fortner, who's not as
Yeah.
well known as John Baptiste, but
Right.
people in the jazz world know him, and he's won Grammys. So I was
Right.
like, I have two 16-year-old kids
Yeah.
playing like this.
I was about to get to that next.
Oh,
So
sorry.
can you talk about some of the students that you taught at NOCCA during your 25 years that our audience members may know?
Well,
John is one. Sullivan is obviously another. Was
Troy
trombone
Andrews, trombone
Shorty
shorty,
was
of
there?
course, yeah. And later on, people like Joe Dyson, who's really made it big in drumming.
He's playing with Pat Metheny.
Plays with Pat Metheny. And who else? I
So
mean,
many of them.
Not many have had those kind of careers, but people know these kids in the jazz world. But yeah, I remember thinking when we got there, because of its reputation of Terrence and people like yourself, thinking, well, maybe if me and Chris Severin are here long enough, we'll have some students that go on to bigger and better things. But I will say, I don't measure the program by that. It's like Ellis Marcellus once said about Harry Connick Jr. He just said, kids like that, he says, you just coach them, So I measure the program by the kids who show up. Maybe they know a few scales, and you see a little potential, and then after the first year, they know all their scales or whatever, and they're starting to play something that resembles what would be a professional musician. So I think that's what your program really is, because you're saying you teach jazz music,
Right.
and you got to have 4 years of some program. You can't just be hanging out playing
Yeah.
combos and so.
And I remember those years and working with John and hiring him on gigs. And I actually took him on his first out-of-town performance to the Aspen Jazz Camp. I had to call his parents to get permission to take him out there. They're actually on a NOCCA Foundation board now. But talk about a little bit about what it was like working with John and working with Sullivan. I know you started to go into it just a second ago,
Yeah.
but anything in particular that you want to talk about as it relates to them with just teaching them things, how some kids pick up on things a lot quicker than others. Anything
Yeah,
special
I
happening during
mean-
those times?
Well, first, this is a story that I tell once in a while, and I saw John recently because he's so generous.
Yeah.
I also teach at the Heritage School of Music, which is sponsored by our Jazz Fest. And he said they were going to have a surprise guest the day before Super Bowl. And I said, I bet it's John Baptiste. Sure enough, he comes in. He's so sweet, and he's talking to the kids. And I was a little naive. He had this big dude sitting by the wall, and I just figured that's his manager. I said, oh, you John's manager? He goes, no, I do security. I said, whoa, you're so stupid, Polero. He's going to be on the Super Bowl. But then I felt sad. I was like, yeah, he's made it, but like he needs security. And
Right.
I mean, the dude had a knapsack, and I'm sure he had whatever he needed if it got really bad.
And on a probably ankle.
And people were still reeling from that, New Year's Eve
Sure.
thing. But anyway, Henry Butler.
Yeah.
He was a blind pianist, super powerful, could play all the New Orleans styles on steroids and all the jazz styles. And he just was a presence. This big voice, he was a large man. And Sullivan was much farther ahead than John. John was about to break through.
Sure.
I ain't saying I had part of that, making him break through,
But you were teaching
I
him,
was
right?
mentoring him. Yeah, I was mentoring him. And, so anyway, in music, we talk about playing on the beat. Johnny Vodakovich has a great way of talking about this. He forms a ball. He says, you're either the center of the ball, a little behind the ball, or ahead of the ball. I think people understand that when they're dancing with a partner, like we're not in sync or whatever. But John would play really behind the beat. almost absurdly behind the beat. And I've never been one of those teachers like, hey, kid, you know.
Right.
And I said, you might want to think about playing a little more on top of the beat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going on, and people would visit and tell them, you know. But anyway, they're playing one day, and Henry Butler's in the room, and he's listening, and he's just like this. And all of a sudden, John starts playing, and he barks it really loud. He goes, play on the beat. And the kid just goes, woof. Like, I've never seen it. I didn't even think it's possible that someone could change how they feel, you know.
Right.
Never went back. But anyway, and I always remember this old school adage of people would say, the master sits at the piano or the saxophone or whatever. Now you do it.
Right. Right.
Both of them could do that. And John in particular, I don't know if he wasn't really aware of it, but when somebody played that had a certain type of touch, he would sit at the piano and morph into it.
Yeah.
And then he'd get back to his John touch.
Sure. And he can play any style. Even back then, I had him on a recording, and I mean, we played some funk. He comes from a family of musicians, and they had an R&B band, his family band. But John was one of those musicians, just very versatile. You can take him and put him in any situation, and he would do really well, which we can see now. We can see where his career is now, so he can step into any space and do well.
Well, like yourself, you came from a musical family, and you know you were learning Stevie Wonder tunes and you know older standard tunes like "Wonderful World," where you know a kid his age would never have learned that or know the Motown music. So he had this wonderful background that obviously helped him in his songwriting. You know what a hit was, but once he broke through, it was something to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, it was almost astounding. I mean, he was like absorbing things so quickly.
Yeah.
And of course, he had Mr. Baptiste. Let's not forget that. And Mr. Baptiste would use him on gigs, and it was something to watch. It really was.
Well, we see him now and what he's doing now, and Sullivan. So again, let's give Mike another hand for teaching pianists like John Baptiste. And
well, the thing I do love about New Orleans culture is they really respect their elders.
yeah,
And sure, you know, you were there, you know, at the beginning, and you helped them with a few things, you know. But they come back and say, "That's my teacher."
right.
You know, I mean, I was at Snug Harbor recently, and Sullivan played Monday and Tuesday night. I'll go, Monday and Tuesday night? And I'm thinking, well, he's just this guy that the jazz people know, right? It's packed.
Right.
I mean, I walked out at Tuesday night, the line was out the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but he introduced me as his teacher, you know,
Right,
and he's
right.
studied with all kinds of people, you know, I mean, it's like, and even when he was at, NOCCA that day, you know, he said to Xavier Reed, who's our new chair, he says, "Oh man, it just brings back memory of me and John, you know." And, you know, and I said, yeah, I said, it's like teaching your kid how to swing a baseball bat, and next thing he's in the World
Right,
Series or
right,
something,
exactly,
you know, yeah, I taught him
exactly.
how to swing the bat, you know.
Exactly.
But, you know, so, but yeah, just that humility. And then I told him about a student that we're real excited about. He's got a great name, Noble Hart.
Oh, wow.
And his father, Keith Hart, is one of those teachers of the year. He's been at Kip Believe, and now he's at Willow. And he sent so many kids to NOCCA. I mean, the kind of teachers like I taught her flute, I taught him trombone, I taught him, that kind of real teacher.
Right.
So now this is his son, and the kid is like, so I told, Sullivan about him in advance, had an opportunity to record him on a beautiful Steinway piano. He watched the film, and as soon as the master class was over, which was an hour and a half,
Right.
first thing out of his, I said, look, if you can spend 5 minutes with him, because Sullivan's his hero. First thing out of his mouth was, where's Noble? And then a couple other pianists. He stayed another 45 minutes just doing a piano master class.
Yeah.
And it was like, this guy's off.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
Passing it
on
on.
another level, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Passing it on.
I don't even know if anybody has his skill set.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
so
yeah.
musical, and and
He's considered to be a genius on the piano by many people, not only his peers, but the elders all over the world. So he's highly regarded. He's a very sweet guy, very humble, and would help anybody. So if you guys ever see Sullivan Fortner in your town, he's been touring a lot too. So if you see him come to where you are, please go out and see him. You will be impressed.
Yeah, he told me the funniest story. for the benefit of the kids and myself, I just said, so who was that classical pianist that you studied with, you know, at Oberlin? And because he told me, like, immediately, he just said, this dude just broke down everything I do and relearned the piano, you know, that kind of deal. But subjected himself to it, playing Chopin etudes and the whole 9 yards. And he told me his name's Sanford Margolis, and he told me this story. It was kind of funny. Margolis is, they were talking about, is it from the fingers or is it from the arms? He says, turn around. He says, I bet you can't tell. He says, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And he plays this Chopin melody. And he says, what do you think? Fingers or arms? He says, yeah, I think arms. He says, he takes a pencil and he says, the eraser on the keys. He says, the sound starts here.
Right.
I was like, I've been thinking about that I was like, whoa.
Wow.
He made the sound with the eraser on the pencil. So then he said to the kids, he says, so I spend all my time trying to be as relaxed and economical as I can, you know. So, yeah, it was inspiring.
Amazing. Well,
Inspiring,
thank you for sharing those stories with us.
Yeah, it was kind of funny.
We don't hear those every day.
Yeah.
So, Mike, let's talk about your latest recording project. When did that come out? And who's on it?
My trio or the one with Philip and you all?
Your trio.
Oh. Well, yeah, for the last 2.5 years, well, my old friend, John Vodakovich, I mean, he's a legendary drummer.
Oh, yeah.
He's
One of
a
my
little bit
favorite.
older than me. I met him way back in '74. And, I mean, you know his career and all the different styles that he plays. But he's always been a proponent of a trio. In his mind, with 3, you know, you can have 3 equal parts communicating. Once you get to 4, somebody's accompanying somebody else. So anyway, I discovered a young bassist by the name of Grayson Brokamp. And I noticed that he played a style that I thought would fit with John, that has its roots in the great Bill Evans trio with Scott LaFaro. But he can also play funky music and New Orleans music. And he's a lot younger than us. I think he's like 39. But John just immediately just had a rapport with him. And he loved playing with John, you know. So we've been playing this trio at the Maple Leaf for about the last 2.5 years maybe.
And the record sounds great. You sent me a link to it a while back.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I did listen to it. It sounds really, really good. And we have a new project that's going to be coming out over the summer with vocalist, legendary New Orleans vocalist, Mr. Phil Emanuel. And you guys worked together to write some original songs that we recorded on that record. What was the writing process like with Philip? I know you've been working together for a long time.
Well, Philip's amazing because he, you know, I mean, when it comes to writing lyrics, I mean, you could always repeat a note or something. He's like never asked for an extra note or another syllable. So I've always just given him melodies, and he's come back with these incredible poems or whatever you want to call it, but really strong lyrics. And so, yeah, we've been doing it like over 20 years now. And sometimes we write in the pop vein, and sometimes it's more of a jazz vein. You played drums on his Max Jazz record, which we had like 5 originals.
Yeah.
And you were pretty young back then, wasn't that
was young,
was that over like 20 years ago?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and we still do it. But, yeah, he's got a classic voice. And he's one of the few people that could go from singing whatever pop, gospel, and like really swing and play jazz. Like a lot of singers, they'll sing a ballad really well. Like maybe you came from Broadway, or maybe you come from gospel, maybe you came from pop. They'll sound fine on ballads, but once the beat starts, I mean, you know that as a drummer, they're not hooking up with the rhythm. And he's always been great at that. And, and plus he has this kind of multi-timbral voice where it's just always, you know, different shadings. And
I mean,
you can listen
sing
to it.
falsetto, and then he's a baritone, right?
Yeah.
So his vocal range is just huge. And he is a great lyricist and writer. And I'm looking forward to the project coming out. The name of the recording is The Unusual Suspects, which is a song that was written by great pianist Mr. Peter Martin that we recorded and Philip added lyrics to. So please look out for that over the summer. And I'm going to ask Mike maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll be done. What's next for Mike Palleur? What's coming up?
Well,
Anything
I mean,
you're working
I'm in
on?
a very melancholy state because, you know, I mean, 35 years of really teaching, and you know, I just need to move on to my next chapter, just to let some younger people take over. So, you know, last night we had a concert, we had our 4 levels play, and I really felt like I was just a spectator, and I was like, and I realized how far jazz education has come just since 2002, much less 1990. I mean, you know that.
Yeah.
I mean, when Chris and I were young, there was nothing out there as far as educational materials. And now, you know, you ask a young pianist or horn player, like, you know, so did you study classical? Well, a lot of YouTube. You know, a lot of us say that. A lot of YouTube, you know. So kids just progress, you know, quicker. And it's exciting to see, and it's nice to see that it's, you know, moved on to that. So that's inspiring. But yeah, you know, I still want to teach. I still want to be involved, maybe to get private teaching or whatever. But I will miss 2 things at NOCCA. First, I'll miss working with ensembles.
Yeah.
Because you heard that group today. In fact,
It
I
sounded
would have to say
amazing.
this particular group, maybe they've gone farther than any group. Maybe we've had some all-stars here and there, but they're playing as a group, and I think that's pretty impressive. And I'll miss our Friday performance classes. Like, people don't know that we still do that. Like Harry Connick said, I know performance class was a little different back in the old days.
We had it, yeah.
Because in the old days, apparently,
The classical and jazz would all be together.
yeah, and apparently anybody in the audience, including students, could get up and say, man, the Chopin wasn't happening.
That's right. You can make
know,
comments.
But
and it could be rough.
I think everybody will appreciate it. In our current culture, that doesn't work. There's
Yeah, they have it easier than we
There's
did.
kids
That's
who
for
don't
sure.
even want to hear the teacher say that. They'll storm out of the room.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's that bad, but it's basically just the teachers and try to keep it cool. But yeah, I mean, Harry Connick said that's where he learned his critiquing skills, right?
yeah.
Because anybody could get up and
That's right. The
Probably got-
janitor could walk in.
probably got nasty sometimes, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but it was great. We learned what not to do quickly.
Yeah. Well, when I saw these guys bounce out here today, like, oh, bubbly, and I was like, you know, like if you didn't play every Friday since you were in 9th grade, I mean,
Right.
9th grade, you know, yeah, 9th grade, but I don't think you'd be that comfortable on stage. So
Yeah.
that's probably NOCCA's greatest gift. So even if performance class has morphed, you know, it's not its true performance class like it used to be, the teachers are still critiquing. I mean, we shut them down. I mean, if they play a piece they're not playing, just
Yeah.
politely, next week.
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, I understand.
But that's probably NOCCA's greatest gift, that they get to do that, you know, every Friday.
And we take these students will be traveling to Ascona, Switzerland, to perform at the Jazz Ascona Festival late June. I'm a partner with the festival, so I bring New Orleans musicians every year, and they came last year, and they were great. The audiences love them, and we're going to bring them back this year. But Mike, we want to thank you for being here, taking time out of your day to come and speak with myself and to the audience. And we want to thank you for all of the years that you have invested into the community, the students, and even now. You're not finished yet, and hopefully you won't be leaving town anytime soon when you're retired, just to go on vacation and come back. But we love you. Thank you for being here, and keep up the good work. We appreciate you. Let's give it up for Mike
Appreciate
Polero.
it. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you guys for being here. I am actually here next Wednesday performing with my group with Philip Manuel, and we're going to be doing the music from The Unusual Suspects. So it'll be next Wednesday at 2 o'clock if you're in town. So thank you guys for coming again. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.